Welcome, I'm Terry Christensen, and this is Valley Politics. Today, Dave Cortese, president of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, will give us an update on the state of the county, including controversies about conditions in the county jail and the construction of the new wing of Valley Medical Center. He'll also report on progress on initiatives he announced in his first State of the County speech last year. Later, Sara Reyes will brief us on the work Catholic Charities is doing with the kids at the Washington United Youth Center. Then we'll close our show with part 2 of our interview with Frank Fiscalini, a longtime mover and shaker here in the Valley. All this next on Valley Politics. Welcome, Dave Cortese.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here. We're glad to have you back. It's sort of historic because you recently gave your second consecutive State of the County address. And as far as I know, nobody's ever done that before because the president of the board is usually just there for 1 year and it's alternated amongst colleagues. What changed things? Why were you back for a second year?
You know, it's interesting because I wasn't really expecting that, and I certainly didn't promote the idea. Two of my colleagues, Supervisor Cindy Chavez and Joe Simidian, got together in between board meetings at the end of last year and decided that a 2-year stint for the president of the board, it should be an option for the board, not necessarily required, but it should be an option in the bylaws of the county, the board policies. It didn't allow that up until now. So they brought forward a proposal to change the rules. And I think part of what they were concerned about is that we were in the middle of a pretty robust agenda attacking problems like homelessness and some other areas that deal with equity, poverty and equity. And we're kind of midstream in all that, jail reform. So it seemed to make sense. I didn't know what was going to happen for sure, but they nominated me again in December, and so here we go for another round.
Yeah, some people were a little suspicious that the board was skipping over Joe Simidian because it would have been his turn, but he was behind this change, or one of the people behind the change, right?
Yeah, he brought forward a memo, a transmittal to the board. 2 members of the Board of Supervisors can meet outside of a public meeting to craft a legislative idea and bring it forward under the open meeting laws, under the California Brown Act. Mm-hmm. If 3 get together, that's bad news, that's a violation. So, you know, they got together and talked about it evidently and came forward with the idea. So he was on board the whole time. And, you know, I don't know what will happen next year if he's going to be interested in moving up to board president or doing something else. We'll see.
And is it likely that we'll see 2-year terms for most presidents in future, or is it strictly an option?
You know, I think those of us who are on the board have to anticipate that. You know, you might as well just calculate that somebody like me who has 1 4-year term left as a possibility if I get elected, reelected, probably wouldn't serve another year as president, right? In other words, I think that's how members of the board will think about it is, you know, don't count on these short cycles of a year, maybe a year or 2 off and another year. This is the difference now. I think you're going to see possibly more board presidents do 2-year stints, but you'll see them rotate into those positions less frequently because you work your way through a 5-member board.
Well, kind of a nice thing for us is when you have 2-year terms, we get to have you back after your second year and ask you how you did with the goals in your first year. So let's go back to some of those first-year goals. One of the things you told us last year that the county was fiscally sound, that there was probably going to be a small budget surplus, that the pensions for the county employees were sound, and that you were working on health insurance for retirees. How's that stand this year?
Good. I mean, the state of the county is good. You know, we just did our mid-year budget, which comes in at the beginning of the calendar year, what most people would call New Year's, right? January. We're on a fiscal year that starts July 1st. So in January, we just received a report that indicated that we have a small surplus now. We'll have a small surplus when we hit the end of June, at the end of our fiscal year. The efforts on homelessness have been particularly productive. Last year, when I was here, hopefully I talked about the creation of the Housing Task Force.
Yes, you did.
And it was a really, it turned out to be a very credible and highly visible task force, led by the head of our Labor Council here, Ben Field, but also co-led by the head of the Chamber of Commerce, Matt Mayhood. So we brought, former adversaries together, people who are sometimes at odds even now on political issues, to make sure that we were very inclusive in our approach, and we wanted to get things done. And we gave them 10 months to get their work done. 10 months later, that 10 months has passed. Mm-hmm. Those two worked with 9 others and came up with a lot of very, very solid recommendations. About $36 million in funding has already come out of their recommendations approved by the Board of Supervisors to be invested in the homelessness issue. Another $64 million is on the table. We're trying to figure out where to cobble that money together, and the implementation, the recommendations on how to use it, though, have already been made by this task force and adopted by the Board of Supervisors. So that work is done.
Does that mean we've already reduced the number of homeless in the county, or are we at the implementation phase for all these ideas now?
Last year I was probably quoting numbers like we have over 7,000 homeless in Santa Clara County, and those were accurate, true numbers based on what we call point-in-time census that are done to count the homeless. We did another one of those since I last appeared here, and the numbers are now 6,600. We think they were about 7,600 last year, so they've gone down a little bit. But poverty in general continues to grow here.
Yes.
We have a problem with it. And in my lifetime, I haven't seen an economy like this here. I've lived here all my life. I have to admit, that started in the 1950s. We've always had this rising tide kind of an economy, that wealth creation and creation of gross domestic product, those kinds of things, tended to benefit everyone. What we're seeing now is tremendous difficulty keeping up with poverty. It almost seems to be growing, on its own track just as quickly as wealth is growing at times. Things that we set off to do last year, have been accomplished or they're underway. I talked about creating a neighborhood safety unit last year to get the county more involved in delivering services into neighborhoods that will actually keep those neighborhoods safe and reduce crime, especially amongst those who are 25 and under. That's rolling. We picked 2 zip codes to focus those efforts just for starters. And when you talk about 2 zip codes, sometimes, for listeners, that'll sound like, that's it, 2 zip codes in the whole county? It's about 20,000 people. Our zip codes here in Santa Clara County and our neighborhoods tend to be as big as some small cities in the Bay Area. So that's underway. And then fun stuff, I think it's fun stuff, but important stuff. We've continued to focus this effort on our waterfront, our South Bay shoreline. Alviso was the old outpost that was annexed not so long ago by the city of San Jose, kind of the last piece of annexation for San Jose, and everyone still calls it Alviso like it's a different town or city. And we were able to focus some additional programs out there, like water tours on boats that take people out now to the Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge. There's a waiting list of about 500 people, which is good and bad. It's a nice problem to have, but we're trying to augment that program so we can get more people out there and enjoy the bay.
County's got a couple of ongoing problems. That is the mistreatment of prisoners in the county jail. The other one is the construction contract at Valley Med. Talk a little bit about your proposals for the jail and where we are with the county med contract.
Well, in delivering this year's State of the County address, I talked a lot about jail reform. In fact, instead of calling this year 2 of opportunity, like last year when I said it's the year of opportunity, I declared this the year of transformation, which I think is a more positive way of saying we got a lot of reform to do. We got a lot of work to do with our jails. Michael Tyree was a mental health person suffering from mental health issues who was in custody in our jails, murdered. 3 deputies have been charged with that. But what we found out is we've got about 50% of that jail population that have been diagnosed with serious mental health issues.
50%, wow.
It's closing in on 50%. Depending on exactly whose figures you're going by, 48% is the lowest number that we've heard. So you think about that, it's a big number, but it also means, why are we trying to deal with mental health patients who need treatment, who need care, who should be receiving other county safety net services, maybe even drug and alcohol services? The combination of drug and alcohol and mental health issues overlaps significantly. Instead, we've got people in lockdown. Perhaps they aren't on meds or they can't get meds, and it's not safe for them. It's not safe for the people who are trying to deal with them. Correctional officers aren't typically trained in mental health care. So we've invested already millions of dollars in trying to catch up with some of those gaps, bringing in psychiatrists and mental health workers, what we call custody health folks. But we're also doing a lot more. We announced last year the creation of a Blue Ribbon Commission that's continuing to meet every other week. It's basically a citizens group. I think it's going to lead to an independent oversight commission that permanently
Independent oversight of the jails and
It just really rides herd over the jails, much like you would see an independent oversight committee or commission that oversees patrol police or that type of thing, police department. So it's the direction we're headed. We'd like to come out of this talking about Santa Clara County being a model for the rest of the nation in terms of what we do with custody, what we do with our jails, rather than what it is right now, which is really a big black cloud over the county.
It's an ambitious goal. It also relates to the homeless issue, because that's a lot of homeless people have mental health problems, and they rotate through the jails too. So the big issues you're talking about are definitely related. What about the Valley Med construction contract? We're going to get that thing finished? We're
going to get it finished. You know, the voters were very responsive a few years ago, voted by an overwhelming margin to do the work at Valley Med to make it a seismically safe hospital, which in large part meant replacing huge portions of it. There was a big multi-million-dollar contract, of course, let out. Turner Construction, which was the general contractor in charge of that contractor, began to experience some problems and delays. That led to upset on the side of county leaders. We terminated that contract several weeks ago. I think that gave everyone a wake-up call. And Turner Construction came back to us as we were about ready to go out and let out a new contract with a different contractor and said, mea culpa, you know, we understand where we failed here. We want to bring an entirely new crew in, an entirely new management team. We want to make things right with the county, and let's settle this thing and get back on the job. So we are bringing them back on the job now. It sounds a little crazy to go through that tango with a hospital with a big general contract, but it's a business deal, and that's what happens in business sometimes. And it's a lot better for us to get this hospital finished than to be in litigation.
What's the completion date now projected?
You know, it's still going to be about 18 months out, but 80% of that hospital is now completed. It's the last 20% that's going to take a little more time.
Dave, you mentioned in your State of the County speech that the county has 18,000 employees, which has to make it the biggest employer in this county probably, and is an almost $6 billion budget. It's huge. I think most people don't realize that, because one of the issues for counties, this county specifically, but counties more generally, is people really don't know what you do or why it matters. What do you think could be done of that? Maybe having the title president of the board helps, maybe being there for 2 years helps, but how do you make people more conscious of how important county government is in their lives?
You know, county government has traditionally been kind of a low interest item in terms of media reports, newspapers, and that kind of thing. So I believe we've got to do a lot more outreach with the communities. You know, the county is big, as you just indicated, and there's almost 2 million people in the county. It's divided into 5 political subdivisions, districts that were elected from as supervisors. But we can function in those districts much more like a small town does, with as long as we have the staff support. And I don't mean staff for our offices, but when we have a new garbage contract that goes out, yes, the county does pick up garbage in neighborhoods, or we're going to try to increase sheriff's patrols in a neighborhood, or we're trying to reduce the incidence of diabetes, you know, countywide. we should have the ability to direct staff people who are experts at outreach into those areas and communicate with people. People are just looking for help. They don't really care if it's federal, state, county, or city. And one of the things we've started to tell people is don't worry about if you think it's a county issue or not. Just call us and we'll hook you up with the right level of government. It might just be us. You never know.
Well, I think you'll get some calls.
Good.
So Dave Cortese, President of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, congratulations on your second year, and thanks very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Terry. It's a joy being here. Thank you.
Now it's time for Community News with Sara Reyes of Catholic Charities.
Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County is a nonprofit service organization that serves and advocates for families and individuals in need, especially those living in poverty. For 60 years, Catholic Charities has changed lives for good by helping to strengthen families and by building the economic self-sufficiency and health of the poor and vulnerable throughout Santa Clara County. Catholic Charities has operated the Washington United Youth Center since its grand opening in November 1999. The Washington Center is located on 921 South 1st Street in San Jose. The Washington Center primarily provides programs and activities for youth ages 12 to 24, mostly during the after-school and evening hours. The Washington Center offers programs such as homework support, open recreation, martial arts, music lessons, cultural and sports programs. The center also offers programs for families such as Aztec dancing, Mexican folkloric dancing, and Zumba. All the programs are offered at little or no cost to the families living in the Washington neighborhood and other low-income areas in San Jose. Youth not only participate in pro-social and recreational activities, but they also engage in the Young Men's or Young Women's Circle, a support group which addresses issues that youth face. Cultivando Salud, or the Cultivating Health program, supports adults and youth in maintaining a healthy and active lifestyle. Fitness classes such as Zumba are taught daily by certified instructors. The Opportunity Youth Academy is a new program we opened. This is an accredited program offering high school diploma for youth 16 to 24 years old who have dropped out of traditional high school. The program integrates applied academic principles, promotes computer software skills, training based on labor market needs, and supports school-to-work opportunities. Graduates will be well prepared and well equipped for the workforce. If you're interested in learning more on how to support, participate, or volunteer, give us a call at 408-283-6150. Thank you.
Next on Where Are They Now, we'll talk with Frank Fiscalini about his 1990 campaign for mayor and his service on the San Jose City Council from 1993 to 2000. Let's take a look. Something else you did was help renovate our beautiful Cathedral Basilica of St. Joseph's downtown. I understand that was a 5-year effort to get the money to renovate that building. How hard was it to do that?
Well, it was very difficult. I didn't spend the full 5 years on the project, but I really started it out, got it going, and it was finished really out of the bishop's office. The bishop came to me and asked me if I would help with that project, and it was really an in-between time for me, from election to who knows what, and ultimately it was running for mayor. So I really needed something to fill up my life at that time. So I agreed to do it. And quite honestly, it was a labor of love. The church was in terribly bad shape.
Yeah.
And I had the joy of putting all the pieces together and have such fond memories of that work. I can remember the day that Dan Breeding of Tennisketter and Breeding came into my office, and they had just finished the structural survey and inspection of the church, and he said, "Frank, I've got some bad news." And I said, "Well, what's the problem, Dan?" And he said, one of the main trusses in the church is separated. It's an extremely dangerous condition. If we have a serious earthquake, it's probably going to come down. There are serious fissures in the walls that need to be attended to. Something we really hadn't planned on because of the expense. It was quite expensive. I took the problem to the bishop, and of course he didn't have much choice. It just had to be done, and they did, and did a fine piece of work of putting that old building back together. And then the interior of it was a lot of fun. A lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. From the organ to all of the artwork in the church. The artist that we employed was Andrei Bozak, Russian, very skilled, did all of the restoration work. It was hard in the sense that money was difficult to raise. And that was
Well, let me ask you about that, because you've also raised money for the Opera San Jose.
Oh, yes.
Why do you think it's so hard to raise money in this town? Are
Well,
we
I've asked
cheapskates?
I've asked myself hundreds of times why we can't shake loose some of the new money in this community to take care of the kinds of needs that we have. Just use the arts as an example. Contrast opera in San Francisco with opera in San Jose.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars are contributed in San Francisco. I can't claim that we receive millions here. I wish we could, because it would be important to the sustenance of the art and for other artworks in our city. I don't know. Maybe the money has to grow old.
Maybe so.
I don't know.
A lot of it doesn't. They don't live in San Jose.
No, they don't.
So,
And
they're not paying attention to this city.
they have a vested interest in San Jose because most of their workers live here.
Yeah,
And,
good point.
Are able to enjoy the art forms that we have and should be supported.
So, Frank, in 1990,
Yes,
you ran for mayor,
yes.
ran against a couple of council members. Ultimately, the runoff was between you and Susan Hammer. Susan Hammer won that election, but barely, by about 1,200 votes. It was the closest election for mayor we've ever had. You look back on that and think, if only I had done this one more thing, what happened?
Well, I did then.
You did then.
But I don't
worry
anymore.
about it now.
No, not at all. My assessment at the time was that there were some attacks late in the campaign.
That was one of the first kind of nasty campaigns we had.
And I ran out of money, and I just didn't have the money to respond. And I think it made the difference, quite honestly. I have never held brief because of that. I accepted the fact that it probably was politics at its worst, and you accept it because you got in the ring. I didn't like it, but I wasn't going to quibble over it. Life goes on, and Susan and I have become, I think, reasonably good friends.
Yeah, you worked with her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you had your comeback in 1992.
Right.
Ran for city council, District 6, Rose Garden, Willow Glen, and you won. And you were reelected in 96, 8 years on the city council, served with Mayor Hammer, Mayor Gonzalez. What do you think was your greatest achievement during your time on the city council?
Oh, boy.
Choose one.
Oh, it's difficult to choose one because I think I had several that I'm very proud of.
You can mention a couple then.
One of them, of course, would be the leadership role that I took in moving City Hall back downtown. That took
That's big.
6 years of council work. And finally able to convince the mayor that it's really time that we move, and she did, and we did, and we made it.
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I think my work with Santana Row and creating that reality, that took a lot of work and effort, a lot of controversy.
And that's in your district, or was in your district?
Yes. Not a happy time for the redevelopment agency.
Yeah, it was a tough one.
They opposed it.
Yeah.
But I felt that it was important for the city, and that it would ultimately pay dividends, which I think history has proven
Absolutely.
that it has. I'm also very proud of the fact that we built a lot of housing in District 6 when I was in office. As a matter of fact, at one point, we had built more housing in District 6 than all of the other districts
Yeah,
combined.
people wouldn't think that because they think of Willow Glen and
It was
Rose
built
Garden as
out.
being fully developed.
There are plenty of other area in
Yeah.
the district that we did build out, and so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the staff I had. Very committed, very responsive.
Well, a few of them were students of
Yes,
mine, so
they were.
there you go.
They were, and and I had the joy of encouraging some of them to go on.
Yeah.
And they've gotten their master's
Yeah,
degrees, and
yeah. Doing
I'm
good
very
stuff.
proud of them. And they're working in government today
Mhm.
and doing quite well. But they helped me be very responsive to the community, and I think we were. We were the first to have a district office. I had a little district office in Willow Glen that I staffed one day a week, and I was there periodically on schedule, and it gave chance for people to drop in, which they did,
Yeah.
and talk about their problems, or just to talk. Many of them just liked to come in and visit, and which was fine.
What about your biggest disappointment during those years?
Easily my biggest one.
Yeah.
My inability to convince VTA or the redevelopment agency to extend the light rail to Santana Row. I think it was a huge mistake not to.
A lot of people are still talking about that. Yeah.
Well, it still
Yeah.
needs to be linked to
Yeah.
downtown, ultimately to Cupertino, because of the tremendous growth that's
Of
going
course,
to
we need
occur.
to go east too.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, it should.
Yeah.
It should go out at Santa Clara and Alum Rock, and I've always believed that the line really should have gone down San Carlos, all the way to Santana, over Bascom, past Valley Medical, where thousands of people are being served. It was more convenient to use an existing line, cheaper to use an existing line, and I suppose that's why they decided to do it. But I was disappointed.
That's a big one.
I was disappointed.
Well, Frank, that's quite a career in public service. As we close, I wonder what your advice would be to other retirees like you and me, or to young people who are thinking about doing some community service. What's your advice?
Oh, be involved, be active, keep the mind turning. Don't become complacent or lazy with yourself. And I think for young people, I would encourage them to take an interest in politics. Become involved, become knowledgeable. And one of the best ways of doing that is to do some volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and whether it's really in a local community, it may be a school board that you want to serve to begin with. It could be city politics, one of the committees of the city or the commissions. Get involved, learn about our community, grasp the history so that really one of these days, if you decide that, yes, I want to become involved in politics, you'll have some background from which to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's terribly important. I would just want to encourage you and all others and myself really to continue to learn.
Yes.
I think that's terribly important.
That's great. Thank you very much, Frank.
Oh, you're very
Great
welcome,
to have you
Terry.
with us today.
It's great to see you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next month, we'll talk with San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo after he reports on the state of the city. And we'll interview another leader who made local history. Meanwhile, you can catch up on previous shows on our website at creatvsj.org or on YouTube at CreaTV San Jose. You can also email comments to us at valleypolitics@creatvsj.org. And you can follow us on Facebook, where you can post comments, suggest topics, and send us questions for future guests. And now that's all, folks. Thanks for watching Valley Politics today. See you next time.
Do you care about what's happening in your community? We do, which is why CreaTV makes it a priority to bring you shows like Valley Politics. But we need your help. CreaTV relies on tax-deductible donation from viewers like you to provide our community with informative local programming. If you like what you're watching, go to createtvsj.org and make a one-time donation or become an ongoing supporter through Friends of Create TV. Thanks for watching.